Um, all right, so you heard that, P's and Q's. Okay. Continue.
For those of you guys that are hopping on, this is Marketing Matters. We've got Jessica from Altos Market Reports on today. She's going to give us a quick overview of this amazing software and how you can really leverage it with your clients.
Yes. And so what you should be able to see now is I have shared our ebook. There's a couple of resources I want to start off with so that when we go in and look at the reports, it'll be much more clear. So before I dive in, who is Altos, right? So we are a data company, right? Where we want to answer the question, how's the market today? Okay? And that's really important to understand what I've said. How's the market today, right? There's plenty of market reports. In fact, maybe you're utilizing others. What makes Altos unique? Well, when you think about that question, it's important that you have, continually updated reports. It's important to know what type of data you need to look at. Many of the market reports that are out there are updated monthly. They also use sold data, both of which are very helpful, but they don't answer the same question. That's answering the question, how was the market last month, right? And that's not our goal. Our goal is to answer the question, how's the market today? And so we do that by focusing on the 100% active market. Okay, so that's one of the key things to remember when it comes to our data is it's the 100% active market. Great. Well, in addition to that, we update these reports on a weekly basis. And it's so interesting. I've been with Altos for about 13 years, so a long time, right? And one of the biggest objections early on was, what could possibly change in a week? And oh my goodness, fast forward, right? And what could change in a day? Once COVID hit, once all of the crazy started to happen, I don't get that objection anymore. So it's really important that you stay in tune with what's happening in the market week after week, right? So that you can kind of gauge. And so one of the things that we are successful at is not only answering the question, how's the market today, but provide leading indicators of change so that you can be on top of that change instead of surprised by it, right? So for example, back in April, May last year, there was some turmoil, right? I know I got lots of phone calls, the sky was falling, all of these things, right? But if you keep in tune with what's happening in the market, although scary, it still was helpful to gauge how things were changing week by week, okay? And so that's one of the great things about these reports. And what you're looking at right now is how to use market data to build your real estate business. And we're going to talk about some points, but I can't talk about all of them, right? And so I encourage you to explore getting access to this particular tool. It's an ebook, it's 42 pages long. I promise you it's not a snooze fest, but it's got some really valuable information in here, right? We're going to talk about a lot of these things, navigating that market report. I have a cheat sheet for, understanding the report, what key stats to watch, all of them really broken down so that you really can feel connected to what you're looking at. That's going to be really important, right? And so looking at this, you can go ahead and go through, you'll see definitions for the statistics, okay? And then there's a whole section in here of answering buyer and seller questions using the data. I really encourage you to go get this particular ebook, look at these questions and realize, oh, this is really going to add value to my ability to answer these questions. What you'll find is that the market reports, they won't surprise you, but it's so great to have something back you up, especially in a time where there's plenty of opinion about what's going on, right? How can you overcome those objections? How can you overcome buyer and seller fear, right? You can provide them data. Follow the data. And it's not that it's going to say something that they hope it to say, but just being informed versus blindly walking is so much more impactful, okay? So that's one resource. Now, the other is this, and it looks a little familiar because it's an excerpt from that ebook. This is something that you can present to your clients while you give them that report, right? Because it's important that they see, okay, here's a high level overview of the components that make up the market report. Why is this important to me, right? Here are all of the definitions of those statistics and why it's important to kind of keep an eye on those things. That's going to be an important thing too, right? It's amazing to me how few questions I get about the statistics themselves, because many people believe they should know what they mean. Not necessarily the case when there's different ideas of what this statistic is. Like our inventory, remember, only the 100% active market. We exclude pending and contingent and those types of things, okay? So before we move into the report itself, I'm going to share with you 2 leading indicators that you want to provide or you want to make mention of. It's super important to understand, A, what that is. One is being price decrease, but also what is normal. So that when you look at the report, you have some sort of gauge as to, okay, where do I fit in the grand scheme of things, right? And so when you're looking at the report, there are 2 key indicators to watch as far as, hey, these are indicators of a change in the market. One of those things is the percent price decreased. How do we read that? Of the 100% active inventory, what is the percentage of properties that have taken a price reduction of some sort since being put on the market? Okay, so that's how we read it. It's the percentage of that active inventory that's taken a price reduction. Well, 35% is normal, is typical. Great. Well, if you don't know that, when you look at the number, you're not going to really know, okay, well, is this good or bad, right? So this is something that you want to point out. Take a highlighter, highlight that, okay? Now, the other one is the percent relisted. Percent relisted for us is awesome, actually. Why? Because we focus from list to pending. So that is what we're capturing. That's what we're focusing on. And because of that, our term absorbed is actually pending and contingent. So percent relisted for us means we're going to capture when all of those contracts fall apart. That's a big sign of how the market's behaving. So are things falling out of escrow? Are more buyers backing out of contracts? Or I don't like my agent, I'm going down the street with another one. All of those are opportunities of relist, and we're capturing all of it, right? And so as that starts to tick up at a rapid rate, you're going to start seeing a more cooling effect in the market. But 10% or less is typical. So that's important to note. So again, when you look at the report, okay, where do we stand, right? And so this is a really big one. So percent price decrease, percent relisted. So now we can go and talk about these reports, right? And if you've been receiving them, awesome. I'm hoping I can shed some light as to a few other things that you may not realize. If you've never seen them before, one thing to share is that we want to be able to take the complex data and put it into an easy to understand format. And I think we've done a great job at doing that, understanding that everybody absorbs this information differently, right? I've been working with Altos for 13 years. I'm still a visual person. I can hang with the data folks, so we call them data geeks. Those are our engineers who really just, they want to see the numbers and they want to see how those numbers change from week to week. I like the visual cues that we have throughout the report, right? And then you're going to have those who are like, super intimidated by charts, numbers, all of that stuff. Just tell me like it is. And we provide copy that talks specifically about what's happening in the real-time market profile. We also have descriptions for the charts. Now, it's also important to know, okay, well, what are the coverage? What's the coverage for these reports? Well, if you can see this is Maricopa County. That's really broad, right? I live in California, Santa Clara County. If anybody ever asks me, how's the market in Santa Clara County, I'm always going to say what part, right? I'm definitely an advocate for diving in deeper, being more localized. I don't know if you have Phoenix. So for example, Phoenix is huge. There are so many zip codes in Phoenix. I'm just outside of San Jose that has a gazillion, San Francisco, a gazillion, right? So if someone were to say, hey, how's the market in San Jose? Well, let me tell you, there is a scary little area over here, high end over here. They all behave differently in the market. That being said, you can get the reports at county level, city-wide, which will take into account all active inventory for every zip code within, for example, Phoenix, and then down to the zip code level, right? And I would encourage you to kind of build a picture, show that, hey, great, you're watching the news, Mr. Client, and you're hearing what the news is saying, which is going to be Debbie Downer a bit, right? Already, but it's also going to be much more broad, right? And now you have the ability to really dive in deeper, meet your clients where they're at and what they care for or about. And that is going to be huge. Okay. So again, you have them at all the different, cities. I have Scottsdale, Gilbert, right? And so as you go through them, here's one, here's Scottsdale. You'll see that it's all consistently the same. Of course, the data changes, therefore those visual cues change as well. Okay. So looking at the report, like I said, we want to be able to take the complex data, put it into an easy to understand format. So there is rhyme or reason to this. We've got our real-time market profile that provides all the most important statistics. So remember that these reports are updated weekly so that you always have fresh content. And these can be delivered to you every Monday morning, right? It's important to know when that update happens. The numbers that are presented here, right, are actually as of Friday. Why? We stop capture on Friday, process the data over the weekend, and publish on Sunday afternoon. Now, what I find that's really helpful is that, yes, this is the latest information, but we also have 13 weeks to look back, and it's interactive. So it makes this really engaging when you show the interactivity here. This is 13 weeks, otherwise known as 3 months. And this is a nice steady climb over the last 3 months, okay? There's no jumping around there. That is just, woohoo, let's go, right? So median list price is going to be directly related to the inventory count here. And remember that our inventory count is solely 100% active. So it's excluding pending and contingent from that list, okay? And so here is the total inventory. This is the median for that total inventory. Now, this next one, median price of new listings, well, what the heck is that? So remember that these are updated weekly. We're going to capture those new listings that come onto the market. There's going to be a set of new listings that come into the market each week. Well, this is the median of that set. So if you think about this being Friday and that date being March 31st, and then before that, the 24th. So in between that week or in that week, what new listings came onto the market? And this is the median of that set of inventory. Now, price per square foot, it's pretty straightforward, and it's exactly the same as the median list. So it's just chugging along, right? And then you'll see things like average days on market versus median days on market. And I love to pause here and tell a story about this because it is worthy of a story and it is really helpful. So notice this is average days on market here is 82. There's a great, decline in days on market. Awesome. This is 82. So what the heck is the median days on market? Well, average days on market takes into consideration all inventory and averaging it out as far as the days on market is concerned. Well, when you have this number, you'll notice it's higher than what you've got for our median. Well, this has been our go-to for years until COVID happened. And then all of a sudden thereafter, there was a real huge drop in inventory. And we have nationwide coverage, which is awesome, except we've realized that no matter where we looked, there were stale pieces of inventory. In fact, my zip code had stale pieces of inventory. My average days on market was 107. We had really low inventory, but there were 2 pieces of inventory that were on the market far too long. We call them the pink elephants that nobody really wants to believe they exist, but do, and accrue days. So, okay, this started to accrue days, but it didn't really represent what was currently happening in the market. So we wanted to remove the outliers and we suggested median days on market. And this does such a better job of really representing what's currently happening in the market. But we left them both because it tells a story. When there's a large gap between the two, that is indicating that there are stale pieces of inventory. This gap isn't too bad. My gap was 107 versus 7. That was huge, okay? And so this really helped better understand what was going on in the market. And so when you see a huge gap here, great, that's a great story to tell because Most people out there, buyers and sellers, are given the average days on market on their little apps on their phone, whether they're doing some sort search online, it's average days on market. So they're going to think they have a lot more time on their hands than they truly do. Using these reports, you can give them a clearer picture, and it's going to mean all the world, right? So it's a big difference there. Okay. Now we're going to look at price decrease. That is one of those key indicators of change, right? Well, 35% is typical. Y'all are at 51%, but it's not so much that the percentage here is that where it was up at 64% just 3 months ago, and we have this steep decline, right? And it's steady. If this started to tick up, then we might start seeing a cooling effect, but holding steady here is okay given where you were at, right? Now we have relisted. 10% or less is what is typical. We're at 7%. What we're looking for here is a steep increase over a quick amount of time or a short amount of time, right? Been dancing here for days. So there is nothing concerning here, right? So great. This has come down and is steady. This is under 10% and steady. Cool. Now, the next thing is inventory. And okay, right? We saw that uptick in inventory back in May of last year. And then, oh, here we go again. We're going back down with inventory. Okay. So here we are there. Now, market action index. Market action index is super important because this is the thing. This is the whole why we do these reports. Is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? Our market action index is our own proprietary algorithm. That's just a fancy term for an equation, right? But that equation includes a lot of these supply and demand statistics tied up in a pretty bow. And like any equation, there's a final weighted number at the end. Our data team determined that 30 was neutral. Anything greater than 30 favors the seller. Anything less than 30 favors the buyer. This is my favorite. Yes, I'm visual, but this is really cool. This is like a speedometer, right? The higher the number, the hotter the market, okay? So looking at this is super helpful because it's a monthly snapshot. The green represents where y'all are right now in Phoenix, Arizona at 51. Now, the gray is a running 30 days back, and it might be challenging for you to see, but it's just a hair hotter than it was this time last month is what this is indicating. So when it goes beyond that gray, it's heating up. If it stops short of that gray, then it's cooling down. This is what's most well received on social media because it's that clear. Once it pops into a seller's market, it gets highlighted and you can gauge based on the speedometer, okay? Now over here, we've got the 51, but we can go back 3 months. And this is really important because you can see that you were back at 39 and you're no longer at a slight seller's market. You are now in a strong seller's market, okay? So if you stayed right here, this first third of the report, it does a good job of answering the question, is it a buyer's market or a seller's market, right? You can see key indicators of change and if you should be aware of those indicators, right? But so some people can stop right there and feel just fine, but there's more. And so it's super important that you know what's possible. You may not do much with it. It's all dependent upon how you want to integrate it. But I would encourage you. Each of these charts tells a story, okay? So the default is median list price. You will see along the bottom, it tells you what it's saying, but also you have a 7-day, which is an update every week. This is 5 years. We went from 3 years, realizing that 3 years didn't give us a good perspective as to what a normal market was because 3 years ago was when COVID started. We've upped this to now 5, and it makes a world of difference. Okay, so 5 years, every week, it's going to be noisy. So we want to go ahead and have a trend line, a more smooth line. Happens to be the 13 weeks averaged out every week. Okay, so that 90-day is the trend. Well, it's important to understand that the 7-day has its benefits. In the 7-day, you will see the momentum of change before the trend kicks in. And that allows you to do a little bit of predicting. Okay. And so I always encourage you to turn off the 7-day and focus on just the trend. You'll see the diamonds, and that's the year over year. This is where we're at now. This is where y'all were at this time last year, the year before, 2020, okay, 2019. So take a ruler and a pencil, holy smokes, right? That's some great growth over the last few years. Okay, so why have that 7-day? Well, this is indicating that prices are continuing to rise. You will see the momentum in the 7-day to say, yes, in fact, that's the case, or maybe there's a downward turn that the trend has not picked up on yet. Click on it, and in fact, it's really climbing, no indicator of price change, okay, as far as going down. So that's great. Now, you're not stuck with just median list price. We can go and we can talk about inventory, which is a big deal these days. Yes, a big deal. Okay. This is where the 5 years is so helpful. Buyers and sellers out there aren't walking around using the term inventory, right? It's what's available to me, what's for sale, right? They don't use the term inventory. So when you start saying things like, well, inventory is really low, and they're interested in a single home, they're not going to think that this is low necessarily, right? Because they're interested in a single home. They need a visual to really see that, yes, in fact, inventory is at is low yet again. So going back, here is where some normalcy was. Look how much inventory there was. But what's so fascinating is look how low it actually had gotten. And see this rise in inventory? How uncomfortable was that for y'all, right? How your clients, maybe yourself, just because we had lived here for so long, we got used to that abnormal level of inventory. So when this started to tick up, holy cow, I got so many calls, right? And you'll see why in a second. But here you'll see that inventory climbed, but it never got back to what was normal before it started dropping down again. So this is a great story to tell when you're trying to deal with objections. What do you mean inventory is low? There's open houses every week, right? Another one that is really great to overcome and understand the market is this. Remove the noise. This is our market action index. This is where you can talk about how the market was driving 100 miles an hour and it was not sustainable, right? So here we were, this was 2021, literally 100 miles an hour. Yeah, it dropped down a bit, but was still really high and then popped back up. But this cliff dive right here made everybody really freak out. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Here's my point. Look where y'all were at. This was a normal market in 2019. Boom. I feel like we were all trying to get back to some sort of normalcy. Real estate's the same. Look at this. This is what happened during the chaotic last 3 years. Then this took a nosedive. Did we turn into a buyer's market? No. Remember, the score is 30. We took our foot off the gas, dropped, and then coast, right? And now we're starting to climb again. This is such a great tool to talk through what's happened the last 3 years, to help clients understand, right? Because you're going to have new sellers throwing out objections to your cost or your price point, right? They're going to say, well, my neighbor sold their house for multiple offers over asking price. What they don't quite understand that it's still a seller's market. This was an unreasonable market here, right? And it could have even happened here. It's just really helpful to have this back you up with what you already know, right? I mean, I got plenty of phone calls saying, how could you say it's still a seller's market? It's because you got so used to this high, right? That when it came back down to a more normal level, it didn't feel like it was the seller's market because you're so used to living here. And so it could be really helpful to use this particular chart. So hopefully that helps you guys better understand. Now, going back up here to list price, one of my favorite ways to use these reports is to be more specific. How can you help your clients the best, right? Talk about what they're most interested in. If you look at this report and you have somebody in Phoenix, and you can do this at zip code level 2, right? Where, okay, here's median price. This is taking into consideration all active inventory. You might have a client, or you might, there's areas within Phoenix that are more expensive some that will fit folks who have a more tight budget, those types of scenarios. So, how can you better talk to individual clients based on what their needs are, what they're looking for? Well, you come down here and you break it down into what we call market segments. This is so important because this allows you to dive into the data in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. Okay. This is being able to say, okay, let's take a look at that inventory. Let's list it from most expensive to least expensive and then divide it by 4. So that each segment that you see here, each line has the same amount of inventory. And then we determine the median. It just so happens that this blue line will always represent the most expensive 25% of properties. So the median for that is 1.1 million. That's far different than the 590, right? On the flip side, the red will always represent the least expensive 25% of properties at 353. Hey, that's also different. So now if you've got a client, and I always say the luxury market because it's easier to say, but if you've got a client, whether it's Scottsdale, Gilbert, Phoenix, whatever, but they tend to want the inventory that is going to be the more expensive, then just focus on that top segment and remove the noise of everything else. Now you can see, okay, how has the market changed over 5 years for that top segment where prices are continuing to rise in that top segment now? Better yet, let's talk about the median days on market. What is the trend for the median days on market? 67. How does that compare to the least expensive 25% of properties? Wow, neck and neck, not typical. Okay, so that's interesting in itself. If you've got a seller who has a property that's one of the more expensive, what is the percentage of properties taking a price reduction? One of the best ways you can incorporate this into your business is to include this data into your listing presentation, making it known that, hey, of the active inventory in your segment, 49% has had to take some sort of a reduction, okay? We wanna make sure that this stays the same or goes down. If this were to continue to climb over time, we may have to come back together and talk about the price of your home. If you then switch it and say, I'm gonna supply a report like this to you on a weekly basis, I want you to pinpoint this, keep an eye on the price decrease. That way they're empowered to better understand the market as they go through that with you, so that if that were to happen and you have to go address it, it's not gonna be a shock and awe moment, and there's not gonna be a lot of emotion tied to it, and it's definitely worthwhile, okay? Now, one of my favorite charts is to look at each segment and then realize that this market action index, our proprietary algorithm, is run on total inventory. Well, we rerun it for each segment. So you have a clearer picture as to the heat of the market for that particular segment. 51 is the score when you take into consideration all. But here is different. Those least expensive 25% of properties is at a 69. The most expensive 25% of properties is at a 47. So cooler than overall. So obviously those least expensive homes are more sought after, right? Not unheard of. But this chart can really help tell a story, help you fine tune your conversation with your clients so that they really do feel it creates this great relationship with them, because you're not just talking about generally what's going on, right? And remember that this is the trend, the 90-day, right? The 13 weeks averaged out, because if it was weekly, we'd go blind. But it's important to know that, to keep into consideration that this is in fact the trend. Having the actual is important, especially when it comes to days on market, where they're all neck and neck, which is pretty great. When you scroll down, the last thing within our report is our market segments table. This is the 7-day. This is not the trend. This is what's currently happening as of last week. So that being said, if this up here indicates that the most expensive inventory is, the trend is 67 days, the reality is 49. That's a big difference. You got a buyer, they're going to need this number. Okay. Now, the least expensive is 67. Okay. The reality, the last 7 days, 42. even better, even bigger, right? So super important to keep your buyers up to date with the time frame that they have. How quick do they need to move? Do they have all their ducks in a row, right? Hugely important. Now, what I love about this as well is it helps set expectations. I live in California. If I'm moving to Phoenix and I say, hey, listen, the most that I can spend is $375. What can I expect for my money? Right? You can say, okay, well, roughly 1,400 square feet. It's going to be a smaller lot size, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's going to be one of the older homes, older, 52 years old. And you've got 42 days from list to pending. Okay, super important. Now, another great way to utilize this market segments table is for an open house. So imagine how powerful these reports could be at an open house, right? You can take this report, you can print it, you can attach your business card to it, make it even more interesting by taking a highlighter and highlight the segment that that home falls within. Now you've got a great conversation starter, because whether they're listening to their news or a general market report, now you've got the latest market report broken down for the home. How is that home going to manage in the market? Okay, so you could come up here and you can say, okay, the median list price, right? And you can say this home falls into the bottom segment, right? Based on its price point, where prices dropped down a little bit and leveled out. Great. Take a highlighter and you highlight the segment once you print it, right? Super helpful in your open house. Print off multiple copies, attach your business card to it, and you're good to go. And so it's really, really beneficial in order to be able to do that. So how do you go from an online version to that printable version? You're going to click on share. You're going to click on single page PDF. Dun, 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 dun. So this converts it to something that allows that print functionality. You don't want to print from your browser. And so now you've got this, okay? Again, print it, highlight that segment, the lower segment, okay, if that's what you have the open house for. So it could be really, really helpful in that way, okay? So think about that. In addition to open houses, the printed version is awesome for neighborhood walks, direct mail, any type of meetings that you're setting aside, right? Networking. All of those things can be super important. And this will be a really great value to add when having conversations with clients. You just need to get the right location. That being said, when you're looking at this, I'm looking at Phoenix. Well, what if I needed a specific zip code, right? Because reality is it's an open house. You should dive in as close as you can. So you find the zip code. Now, I'm not really great with the zip codes here, so I'm going to go ahead and pick it. And I'm going to assume that I'm going to get low inventory because that's my thing, but we're okay, 35. But this is zip code specific. And you'll see here, it's a little bit different as far as how the market's behaving, right? But you can go use this search function to access any area of interest on the fly. So working with clients, if you're online and you're able to do this, you know, shoulder to shoulder, awesome, right? But each one has the same capability of print. Now, I would recommend that if you're going to do a listing presentation, that you bring out the big guns, right? So you're going to click on share and click on full report PDF. This is a 6-page report. Super helpful. It's got a cover sheet that you can choose to utilize or not. But again, attach your business card. It's a third-party report, so it really has value in that sense. And then you go down and it's really nice. You've got all of your data. You've got all of the charts that are extracted for that online one with content that says, hey, by the way, if you don't know what these charts mean, here's what it's trying to say, right? So again, it's really helpful, meets people where they're at, because you're going to have clients who eat this stuff up and you're going to have clients who are like, right? Pump the brakes a bit. It's a little intimidating. So it's really important that you be able to do, meet them where they're at based on how they absorb this information, okay? So hopefully that's helpful. So you've got the online version. Each report has its own unique URL. Just copy the URL. Bookmark it if you'd like, right? That's how you can share it with your client. Copy the URL, send it off into an email that you send off, okay? Attach the PDF if you think that's going to be an easier way to go. Totally up to you. And in addition, you have the ability to share on social media. It's just a click to share. So super helpful. You just click on Facebook, you get to decide on the active image. Remember what's most well received on social media? The market action index. Click on share, and it's going to pull up my Facebook. It'll pull up your Facebook, and you decide, do I want to put it on my personal page? Do I want to go ahead and put it on a page that I manage? Lucky Real Estate makes sense. And then you put your call to action here. You have got to hold people's hands. So you say, hey, now that we're really well into the new year, it is a seller's market here in Phoenix, such and such, right? Be sure to click the image below to view the full version of the report. Drop me a note if you have any questions about the market. And you've got great content. And if you get harassed like I do by Facebook, you got to have great content to continually update it, or they'll shut it down. So it's very helpful to have something to share. So I encourage you to do it. It's not automatic. So schedule time on your calendar to do it. And I think you'll see that it's super helpful in that way. All right. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully you see new things that you didn't see before. I do see that there are some chats in here. So let me go look at that. But it looks like a conversation maybe.
It is, yes. We have people that would like to sign up for that. Imagine that, Jessica.
Yeah, good. I'm all, wait, what is it saying? Oh no, okay. Yeah, I do. If you have questions, let me know. I do hope though that you feel encouraged and excited about the idea of utilizing these reports. I really do think it's great conversation, right? And it builds trust with your clients if you just engage them a bit. And like I said, use the report explainer for you. Use the report explainer to share with your clients. It's definitely helpful. And just encourage them to keep an eye on those, indicators. Here's why. The reality is they could go ahead and look at the market action index. You could look at the market action index. It pretty much answers the question, but you want to create engagement points because it is a pretty report. It's easy to open up and go, oh, okay, great. Close it up and on with your day. If you say, hey, I'd really like you to keep an eye on a couple of things, and then reach out to me when you see any notice any change, right? That price decrease, I will tell you, I need to come up with testimonials because I've had clients reach out and say that it was a lifesaver to just be able to say, hey, keep an eye on the price decrease. And if you see it ticking up over time, we may have to come together and talk about the price of your home. You remove that responsibility from yourself. It's amazing how many fingers get pointed at you as an agent when that has to happen. And it's not you. It is because the market is suggesting that needs to happen, right? Also, you're going to get clients who are like, they disagree with your price point. I think I should ask for more. And that was happening a lot when these multiple offers things were happening, right? So multiple offers. So why would I start low if I know I'm going to get multiple offers? They don't quite understand because that's not their business. So you've got to overcome what they think they know. And data is really where it's at to be able to do that. Okay.
It really is. It really is. I mean, you are the expert in your industry. And what we're seeing right now is that almost everyone is using a realtor right now because of things like the changes in the market. I mean, we're at about a 90% rate of people using realtors, which is extremely good. So, being the realtor in the know, having this information and being able to help your clients with it is so important. Jessica, we do have a couple questions in the chat.
I did see that.
So one of them, I utilize Altos Reports. How do I access the ebook?
Yes. So Sarah, I can send you the link to that and you can distribute to the attendees if you'd like. In addition to that, I have the attachment, a PDF file for the report explainer. So I can do that after this call, send you an email with those two things, and then you can distribute to those who have attended. Okay.
That would be wonderful. And then we do have another question. Are you able to do a report for just a month or 3 months or 6 months?
This is a good question. So long story short, no, it's the same report. However, remember our goal is to answer the question, how's the market today? So what is a 3 months? What is the goal behind a 3-month report? Now, understand that this is the latest, but they do have 3 months. So you can compare what's happening now with what was happening 3 months ago. So if that was the goal, awesome. Yes, you would provide them this report. You would just provide it once every 3 months. Okay. So that's one way to deal with that. The 6 months, remember, this is 5 years. But the reality is the short answer to the question is no. We have one report. It updates weekly, but provides a lot of data. So you can go back and you can look at those things. Okay.
Yeah, well, and having a lot of data, it's one thing to provide that data to your clients. However, remember that they may not be reading it correctly either. So
yeah,
you having the ability to explain to them, this is what it was like 3 months ago. This is what it was like 6 months ago. That's invaluable. I mean, providing them the data is one thing, but being able to explain it to them, that's where your real value as a realtor comes in.
yeah. And if you needed to, just so you know, I don't talk much about this, but if you go to the timeline of the chart and hold down your mouse and drag it back, you can zoom in. This would be 1 year. This would be about 6 months. I don't want to admit that that's 6 months ago, but yeah, there we go. So now you're just looking at the last 6 months.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of people will do just the last year. But, you know, especially if you want to look at what happened since March, since May, right? Same idea. You just keep your cursor down there and it'll tell you the time. Whoop, that's too far, Jess. Okay. May right here. And then you can focus on this. See?
That, yeah, that is very awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Jessica while we have her on and we have her live? And just a quick reminder too, if you are not already signed up with Altos, please reach out to your business development manager. They're the ones who are going to be able to get you signed up for this. And if you're not already working with a business development manager, you can of course reach out to me, and I would love to make the introduction. This is exactly what they were looking for, Jessica. Perfect.
Yay! Well, it was great chatting with you guys. Thanks again for setting aside the time, and I look forward to talking with you all another time. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to wrap
up
today's presentation with just a few other classes that we have coming up. I love taking the opportunity to go over the few things that, well, a few things. We do a lot of things here at Landmark Title. And yes, you can get the recording. I will upload this later today. You can go to our Landmark Title YouTube channel to get it, or reach out to your business development manager and they can email you the link for it directly. Just reach out. I plan on uploading it later today. And then also, speaking of market stats and market reports, we've got the recordings for Market Insight. This is our monthly, it was a live webinar, but we've had a lot of success recording it and sending the link out to you. This is available on our YouTube channel, but I would highly recommend reaching out to your business development managers. And once again, they'll have the link to send to you directly. And it's more than just the market stats. Scott Kibbers is great. He goes in and he explains what is actually going on with those stats, how to interpret them, and how the changes and the growth in Phoenix are affected by it. So once again, another piece of valuable information that will be available this week exclusively with Landmark Title. And then, of course, we have the spring training series. Deanna Bone is teaching this. Beth is hosting it. It's an 8-week series. So we've got a couple of weeks left, about 2 weeks left, 3 weeks left of this series. Next week, my personal favorite, video, text, social media. If y'all want to hop on that, that's a Zoom class as well. Reach out to Beth. We can get you registered. Then next week on Marketing Matters, we have Keith Flynn coming on to talk more about ChatGPT. Who is using this AI feature out there? If you are not raising your hand right now, hop on. Even if you are raising your hand, there's so many different features that are available. It's so much fun. And honestly, it can really help you to streamline some of the things you're doing in your business. So we're going to get some more information on that next week. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited about it as well. I honestly can't get enough when it comes to learning about ChatGPT. And then, there we go. CE classes. You need them, you love them. We bring them to you at Landmark Title. So we've got tax code for 1031 exchanges coming up April 20th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. This one's going to be live and in person at the Atrium at Arrowhead. It's only $10. You get 3 hours of legal issues. This is a great class. This is one that we continue to bring back. It's hosted by Renee. So reach out. There's a bit.ly link there. You can also go to our Landmark Title website as well. We've got an events page and you can register directly from that page. And that's it for us today, guys. So of course, thank you to everybody that hopped on today. Thank you to our business development managers. They are your one-stop shop for all the good stuff that Landmark Title has to offer. And then please reach out on your next contract. Think of us for your title and escrow. This is actually what we do. And we do a darn good job of it. We have 7 offices here in the Valley, as well as 1 in Prescott and 2 up in Nevada to service all of your title and escrow needs. So thank you all so much for coming out today. We'll see you next week.